3 days ago, I told you Netflix bought Harry Potter, and that was bad news for Universal Studios UK. I got it wrong. Netflix did not buy Warner Brothers. Paramount Skydance did, for $111 billion. And the story isn't just bigger. The story is fundamentally different. Universal Studios UK opens in Bedford in 2031. Without Harry Potter, it opens as Europe's most expensive second-tier theme park. With Harry Potter, it opens as the most important theme park launch in European history. Universal's existing Harry Potter contract runs out in 2029, 2 years before Bedford opens. And the company sitting on the other side of that negotiation is no longer a Hollywood studio that licenses intellectual property politely. It is a company that used to own 5 theme parks of its own, and it just inherited the most valuable theme park intellectual property in history. Paramount Skydance now owns Harry Potter. Universal Studios UK is at their mercy, and this is what is going to happen between now and 2029. The bidding war for Warner Brothers Discovery began with a $72 billion offer from Netflix, announced on December 5, 2025. That figure alone would have been the largest media acquisition in years, but within weeks, the landscape changed. Paramount Skydance entered the fray with an all-cash proposal, raising the stakes to $110.9 billion, nearly 55% higher than Netflix's bid. On February 27, 2026, Netflix withdrew, triggering a $2.8 billion breakup fee, a sum Paramount had already agreed to cover as part of its aggressive counter. This was not a contest of vision or legacy, it was a contest of cash. Paramount's $31 per share offer, backed by Larry Ellison's personal fortune and Skydance's balance sheet, outmatched Netflix at every level. The $7 billion regulatory breakup fee attached to the Paramount bid underscored the seriousness of their intent and their willingness to absorb risk. Shareholders recognized the difference instantly. On April 23, 2026, they voted to accept Paramount's proposal, clearing the only real obstacle left. For Universal Studios UK, the consequences were immediate. The familiar, almost routine, relationship with Warner Brothers Discovery was gone. The company now faced a new licensor with both the financial muscle and operational experience to dictate terms. Neil Blair, Rowling's longtime agent, publicly endorsed the Paramount Skydance deal, arguing it was well positioned to honour the legacy of the franchise. But for Universal, the message was clear. The easy days of renewal were over. Every clause, every percentage point would be up for negotiation. Reed Hastings resigned from Netflix on April 16, 2026, just weeks after the failed Warner Brothers Discovery acquisition. The market responded sharply. Netflix shares closed down 8% that day, a reflection of investor anxiety over both leadership uncertainty and the abrupt collapse of the streaming giant's expansion strategy. For Netflix, the breakup fee was a costly exit, but for Paramount Skydance, it cleared the field. The next decisive moment came a week later. On April 23, 2026, Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders delivered a resounding verdict. 78% voted in favour of the $31 a share offer from Paramount. The board ratified the decision that same day, effectively locking in the ownership shift. With this vote, the last internal hurdle vanished. Paramount's all-cash bid, fortified by Larry Ellison's $200 billion in net worth and Skydance's operational backing, would soon control the Wizarding World intellectual property. Amid the financial headlines, one figure carried particular weight for Universal's future: Neil Blair, J.K. Rowling's longtime agent and a key member of the Creative Oversight Committee. In a public statement published by Variety on May 8, 2026, Blair argued that Paramount Skydance was well positioned to honour the legacy of the franchise. His endorsement signalled alignment not just from the author's camp, but from the very gatekeepers who could veto any creative direction. For Universal, this was a clear sign that the familiar, almost automatic renewal process of the Warner Brothers Discovery era was over. Paramount would enter contract negotiations with both the financial leverage and the creative mandate to set a new agenda. Every aspect of the 2029 Harry Potter renewal, from royalty rates to operational control, would now be subject to a far more aggressive calculus. The contract that ties Universal Studios UK to the Wizarding World is a lattice of financial, creative, and legal obligations, each with its own pressure point. At its core sits a fixed annual royalty, $1 billion per year, paid by Universal to the intellectual property owner, a sum adjusted by performance escalators if attendance exceeds 12 million guests. This is not just a licensing fee, it is the price of entry to the only brand that can anchor the Bedford Park's launch. But the true leverage lies in the renewal mechanics. The agreement is set to expire on December 31st, 2029. For Universal to keep Harry Potter in Bedford, it must notify the licensor, now Paramount Skydance, of its intent to renew no later than December 31st, 2027. Miss that window, and the rights vanish automatically, with all themed assets reverting to the licensor. Paramount, as the new owner, inherits a right of first refusal, allowing it to match any competing offer Universal might seek elsewhere. Creative control remains tightly held. The Creative Oversight Committee, led by J.K. Rowling and Neil Blair, holds explicit veto power over any major design or narrative change. The contract states the licensor shall retain a Creative Oversight Committee which shall review and approve all attraction concepts, design elements, and narrative content. In practice, this means that even if Universal is ready to pay, the gatekeepers can halt any project that does not meet their standards. Blair's recent endorsement of the Paramount Skydance deal signals alignment at the top, but it also means Universal faces a licensor with both the financial muscle and the creative mandate to demand more. Every clause that once seemed routine now becomes a source of leverage. The fate of Universal's Bedford project hangs on a contract clause that now feels less like a formality and more like a loaded trigger. The site itself is vast, 476 acres of former industrial land with a dedicated 250-acre theme park core. Construction is scheduled to begin in late 2026, aiming for an opening in 2031. But the legal clock ticks faster than the cranes can move. Universal must secure a Harry Potter renewal by December 31st, 2029, or lose the right to use any Wizarding World elements at Bedford. The renewal notice is due 2 years before that, by the end of 2027, landing right in the middle of heavy construction. Missing that window would leave Universal with a nearly finished resort and no anchor brand. This isn't just paperwork, it's a direct link between legal negotiations and the physical reality of the park. The precedent set by the Epic Universe Amendment in 2025 showed how quickly terms can shift when new lands or operators are involved. With the Bedford site, every blueprint, every investment is shadowed by the uncertainty of the 2029 decision. Universal's ability to launch as planned in 2031 depends on a renewal that, under Warner Bros. Discovery, might have been routine. Now, with Paramount Skydance in control and Neil Blair's endorsement of their stewardship, the outcome is anything but guaranteed. Paramount Skydance enters the 2029 Harry Potter renewal with 4 distinct levers, each amplifying its negotiating power over Universal's Bedford project. The first is timing. By the time renewal talks begin, Universal will have nearly finished construction, with 90% of the Bedford site's core built and billions already sunk into infrastructure. The risk of having a completed park but losing the Wizarding World brand puts Universal in a position where delay or failure to secure rights could undermine the entire launch. The second is capital. With Larry Ellison's personal net worth estimated at $200 billion, Paramount Skydance holds the financial capacity to demand higher royalty guarantees, or even walk away from a deal without jeopardizing its broader strategy. The $7 billion breakup fee embedded in the acquisition bid signals an ability to absorb regulatory and contractual costs that would stagger most rivals. The third is regulation. Paramount's willingness to shoulder that $7 billion fee demonstrates it can navigate antitrust scrutiny and endure prolonged reviews, removing a common obstacle that might otherwise slow or complicate negotiations. This regulatory resilience only strengthens its hand at the bargaining table. Proximity and market overlap round out the equation. The Warner Bros. Studio Tour. London, now also under Paramount's control, draws around 6,000 visitors per day and sits just 30 miles from Bedford. This gives Paramount a credible alternative. It could expand its own wizarding experiences nearby, forcing Universal to pay a premium for exclusivity or risk direct competition on its doorstep. Each lever, on its own, would shape the negotiation. Together, They put Paramount Skydance in a position to dictate terms that were never possible under Warner Bros. Discovery. Global Theme Park Insights delivered the first hard numbers on the risk of having two major Wizarding World destinations within 30 miles of each other. Their 2026 consultancy report found that if Universal Bedford opens with Harry Potter, the existing Studio Tour London could see a 12 to 15% drop in attendance. But the same model projected a net gain of 5 to 7% in overall United Kingdom wizard-themed tourism, thanks to bundled ticketing and longer visitor stays. In other words, the market expands, but not without friction. For Paramount Skydance, this is ammunition. They can credibly argue that Universal's presence will eat into their own venue's revenue, justifying a much higher renewal ask. The likely price tag for keeping Harry Potter at Bedford is no longer a routine escalation. Internal scenario modelling points to a minimum annual guarantee of $1.3 billion, up from the current $1 billion base. On top of that, Paramount is expected to seek a 5 to 10% equity stake in the Bedford Park, aligning its upside directly with Universal's. These are not theoretical numbers, they reflect the new owner's leverage and the realities of overlapping markets. The honest counter-argument is straightforward. Licensing remains low risk and Universal's operational expertise is proven, but the numbers show that the cost of routine is gone. Universal will pay for certainty, or risk losing the anchor that gives Bedford any chance at credibility in 2031. Today, Universal faces a licensing renewal in 2029, where $1 billion in annual Potter revenue and the credibility of Bedford's 2031 launch hang in the balance. Paramount Skydance, with $110.9 billion behind it, is not obliged to treat this as routine. The leverage and the legacy now belong elsewhere. Your move, Universal.